Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am Anna Spiesens. I am your host and moderator for today, and I am part of the ECOP program's training and mentoring task team. We'll still wait a few minutes to give people some time to join, and yeah, then we will start. In the meantime, maybe I can tell something about the ECOP program. So ECOP, standing for Early Career Ocean Professionals Network, is a program that was endorsed by the United Nations Ocean Decade in 2021. And as part of knowledge sharing, we developed a series of webinars that aim to train and inform the community of ocean lovers. And today we have a very interesting webinar about ocean adventures for citizen science. And we will have two speakers today, Christoph and Caroline, both working on citizen science projects. And for those already here, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from, what you're doing, what your background is. That's always nice to see who our audience is. Ah, hello, Jake from Malta. Finishing up my master's in engineering, which was focusing on the development of a nanocomposite coating for ship hulls and other aquatic structures. Nice. So we already have 21 participants today. We'll still wait a few more minutes, 2 more minutes, and then we can start. Hello, Stephanie from Italy, studying a Master of Climate Change and a Master of Circular Economy, passionate about ocean conservation and ocean energy. Alex from Sweden and Lebanon, working as an MPA program coordinator, starting a Master in Ocean Law and Economy in Lisbon. Okay. Okay, I think we can start with the webinar. So for those who have just joined, welcome today. Our webinar for today will be about ocean adventures for citizen science with our two speakers, Christoph and Caroline. And to get to know the audience a little bit, we will start with a quick poll with some questions about which region you are joining us from and what your background is. So everyone should be able to see a poll question coming up with 3 questions. Where are you joining us from? Do you live close to the coast or inland? What made you interested in joining this webinar? So I see that we have quite a few people already from Europe and Asia joining. And yeah, 3 people living close to the coast. Also somebody living inland, somebody from West Africa. It's always really nice to see these answers coming in. Okay, 9 people living close to the coast. I'll wait just a few more seconds and then I can share the results with everybody. Okay, so people from West Africa, South America, and Europe joining us today, Asia as well. Most people living to the coast, a few inland, and let's see what people said. Answering the question, what made you interested in joining this webinar today? I'm interested in making ocean science accessible to everyone. Fisheries officer interested about the ocean and conservation. I want to enable all scuba divers to become citizen scientists with minimal effort. Divers contributing to science. Very nice answers. After more than 8 years in process improvement management, I'm looking into changing my career purpose to work with something I feel passionate about. ... The ocean. Yeah, many answers. We are planning for a project on citizen science related to the marine sector. Just interested in marine biology, quite new to the field and trying to learn as much as possible. Okay, thank you everybody for answering these polls and sharing this with us. Now we will start with our first speaker of today, Caroline. Caroline is a deep sea ocean researcher, but also a science communicator. So Caroline, I will leave the floor to you.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and share my screen with you. Thank you all for joining today. I'm excited to be able to share this project with you. And it's nice to see that there's a lot of interest in this topic. I guess that's why you joined the webinar, because you're interested in the topic. But there seems to be also some experience in this field. So I'm going to talk about Into the Deep, which is a marine image analysis hub for citizen scientists. That's the project that I'll introduce. But first, I thought I would maybe introduce myself. So as I mentioned, I'm Caroline Johansson, and I started my, let's say, deep sea adventure at Florida State University. There I spent some time watching bubbles, looking at oil and gas releases from the seafloor. And then I also did a postdoc at AVI, that's in Germany, in Bremerhaven. And there I looked at seafloor images and was looking at how AI can help us identify little organisms on the seafloor. So I've always been kind of busy with images and the technology that goes behind that and everything. And then the last couple of years, I've moved into science communication, which is really near and dear to my heart. I enjoy a lot. And we've coordinated multiple projects that are funded by the European Commission. And all of these projects are quite different projects, but all these projects, the kind of common denominator between them all is that we want to focus on communicating information about the ocean to the public and kind of what these connections are with the ocean and climate change and sensibilizing people to this topic. So that's a little bit about me, who's on your screen today. And then let me just get started on Into the Deep. So this is a citizen science project that I'll be talking about. And I always like to, I didn't do this project on my own, so I would like to acknowledge the partners that helped put together this project. We have partners across both educational institutions, academic institutions, adult learning institutions across Europe that came together. And it's, as I mentioned, funded by the European Commission. And so the idea and the motivation, I guess, behind this project was from these two sides, the academic scientist side and also the adult education side. And on the scientist side, you have the technology, amount of data, puzzle pieces, and then we have this idea of outreach, kind of bridges between the two, and an adult education. We're like, okay, how do we take each of these different puzzle pieces and put it together? So I just introduce each puzzle piece. So we have technology. It sounds like some of you have some in the audience have some experience with oceanography or ocean studies, but basically technology is only getting better. We're getting more and more different types of photo surveying tools. We have AUVs, which are underwater vehicles. They're basically drones that go underwater and they can collect data. We have cabled observatories, which is where you have a lab on land and then you have a big cable going into the water. And at certain points, you have basically like a connector where you can connect different instruments and access these instruments directly from land. So the amount of data that's coming in through all this, these changes in technology is huge, which brings us then to our second puzzle piece, the amount of data. So within oceanography, we've kind of entered this big data era, you could call it. And what we're finding is that the amount of data that's collected, we get into this bottleneck effect of how much of that data can actually be analyzed because because of funding or not enough people. And so the question is, okay, well, how do we address this? Because this data is of course important and we want to look at it, but we just don't have the manpower to do so. So those are kind of the puzzle pieces from the scientific side, scientist side of this project. And then we come to the outreach side, which is, what do we know? What do we know in the scientific community? But what do we also know outside of the scientific community? What do people know about ocean pollution? Are people aware of overfishing? Or what does ocean warming actually really mean? And how does habitat destruction actually affect me as a person? And outside of the scientific community, people don't really have a good idea of this and this connection between how the ocean is, let's say, connected to the entire environmental processes is not as well known. And so that, of course, we want to then address through adult education. And so there are a lot of studies being done now on ESD, which stands for Education for Sustainable Development. And this is how do we, in the best way possible, educate people, not just that they know things, but that they also want to start changing their behaviors and making a difference in how they act in a more sustainable way. So to show this, we have different learning dimensions. So we have the cognitive learning dimension, and this is the kind of the knowing, so understanding certain challenges, seeing the interlinkages and exploring ideas or alternative solutions. And up till now, that's always been the way that we kind of throw information onto people. We give people the information. But we need to also, to see some type of change, reach people at the heart. And this is where you come to the social and emotional learning dimension. And so this is where people build their core values. It cultivates empathy and compassion for other people or for the planet. And from the heart space is kind of where people are motivated to make some type of change. Because you can know something, but if you don't feel it, then you're not as likely to want to make a change. And a lot that comes from this is also then the third learning dimension is then the behavioral learning dimension. And this is facilitating people to actually take practical action and then to be able to make transformations in their personal space, or if they want to go bigger in the societal and political spheres. And so this is a study from UNESCO in 2020, and they're saying that, if we can harmonize and balance these three learning dimensions, we'd likely have the best outcome for education for sustainable development, where people will actually be able to feel empowered to also make changes and want to make changes. So that's, again, I come back to these puzzle pieces. So these are all different puzzle pieces that motivated this project. We wanted to address this increase of the technology, then amount of data that comes in. How do we reach the people, and then how do we educate as well? And let's dive in. So that's how Into the Deep was born. And with this as well, that goes with the kind of the emotional learning dimension as well, is that a lot of places underwater are not accessible to people. So, and often when you have a connection to something, then you're more willing to find this love for it and is willing to protect it. And so how do we get these really inaccessible places to the people? And this project is very what we call a hands-off type citizen science project, because all you really need for it is a laptop. It doesn't matter if you live inland or inland or on the coast. It doesn't matter if you're able to swim or you're not able to swim. As long as you have a laptop and an internet connection, you can do this project. And it's a citizen science project which invites the adult learners to take part in the research. And the job of the citizen scientist in this project is then to look at images that come from the deep sea and then be able to identify and annotate different organisms on it. So we kind of really give the citizen scientists the possibility to take part, like feel what it is to be a marine scientist and take part within the scientific process. So I'll just introduce a little bit the different locations that you can visit in this project and into the deep. So we have a data set from the Northeast Pacific. We have one from the Arctic Ocean. We have the Mediterranean off the Catalan coast, and we have one in the Aegean Sea. And so here you see this is the data collected from UPC in Barcelona. And they are looking, so this is a cabled observatory. So they have a camera on the seafloor that's taking pictures of the same area at a certain time interval every day. And they want to look at how what type of the changes in the fish species that are there can tell us about the temperature changes in the water. And so the task of the citizen scientist here is to annotate the 5 different species of fish that they are looking for to help the scientists. So then the other location is here, the submarine canyon of the Northeast Pacific. And this is a cold seep area. And here there's also, they want to look at the biodiversity, what type of animals live in this cold seep. And so here the citizen scientists are also then given a list of organisms or animals that they want to find. And then the citizen scientist goes through a bunch of pictures to find this. And this again as well is also a camera that's set at the seafloor on a cabled observatory. So I forgot exactly the interval that they're setting the pictures at, but there's a lot of image data coming in from here as well. And then in the Aegean Sea, they call this the best kept secret of the Mediterranean. It's a really beautiful place that's full of different, it's extremely biodiverse, but it suffers from fishing and the ghost nets left from fishing. And so what they're looking at here is also trying to look at the biodiversity, and the idea is also hopefully to get enough data to be able to set up also marine protected areas in this area. And excuse me. And then finally, we have also data from the Arctic Ocean off the coast of Svalbard in Norway. And here, the ecosystems experience a lot of trawling. And so the scientific question here for this area is looking at how trawl marks affect how trawl marks affect this ecosystem. And so again, here we want to look at the different organisms over there. So those are the 4 different areas. And so when the citizen scientist starts this project, then they can choose, or you can choose which area you want to look at. And then there's a short little lesson about each one. And in the lesson, you learn about the ecosystem. Why is it important? How does it fit into the big picture of things? And what is the actual scientific question that what are the scientists researching in this area? And then it prepares you for the fun part, where the part you can get started, which we call Biggle Party. So here you see, so Biggle Party is an online tool. It is based on Biggle. I don't know if maybe some of you might be familiar. It's a annotator system that scientists use, and it's based on this, made by our partners at Bielefeld University, but then made a bit more intuitive and gamified for citizen scientists to use. So as you see here in the video, oh yeah, I'll start again when this part's gone. Yeah. So as you see here in the video is that you click on the lobster and then you can see the lobster there, and then you get 10 points for getting the correct organism or the correct animal. And then you move on, you see a starfish, you click on starfish, and then they have a little description as well if in case you forgot in the lesson, then you know what it looks like, some pictures to show you how the different starfish look like. And then you get scores as well. So they wanted to make it as fun as possible for people to use. So yes, again, as I mentioned, the key points. So it's intuitive, it's easy, you have easy instructions, you have a progress bar to see how far along you are. And then it's gamified. So there's the point system, and you get quantity versus quality. So you get points for how many things you find, and then you also get points for how well you find things. And I actually talked to Tim Grandjean, one of our scientists who gave the data of this this data here that you saw in the ADNC, and he said that he's really excited because some of the results that he's getting in, that citizen scientists are actually really accurate, and they're actually finding things that he missed when he was going through some of the images as well. And this is what it looks like then on the side for the scientists, so they can see how many people have annotated the different things and what the agreement is there, because the idea is to have multiple people look at the same images to make sure there aren't any outliers, or to make sure that it's statistically valid, so that the scientists can actually use it within their studies as well. And then, of course, if there's mistakes, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's like the big purple circle and the big green circle, and that were just mistakes, but then nobody else made the same mistake, so they get thrown out in the database afterwards. So yeah, don't just take my word for it. You can try it out yourselves. Grab out your phone and you can scan this this QR code, and it'll take you to the website where then you can try choose which habitat you're interested in. We have each lesson also in 4 different languages, in Spanish, Greek, German, and English. And we also have 4 people who are already busy with citizen science or have images and would like to make a citizen science project out of it. We have a handbook for marine image analysis for citizen science, which kind of takes you on a step-by-step way to set up your own citizen science project in a similar way. And then one last thing I just want to mention. One last thing I want to mention though about this works best on laptops. So for this project, it works on a tablet or a phone, but it's really not that great because you just can't see the image that well. So if you do try it, then I highly recommend you do it on a laptop. And then this is also a very special project that I want to mention, the Deep Discovery. And this project is basically taking the same Into the Deep citizen science project idea, but bringing it into schools. So we've gone to different conferences and different events, and every time people are like, oh, that's really cool, do you have it for schools as well? And so we're happy to say that we did get funding to bring this into schools, and this is Into the Deep's, I guess, little sister, the Deep Discovery. And here the idea is to basically take the same concept of Into the Deep, but adapt it so that it's more applicable for schools within schools. And so we've just started this project. We're now still in the co-creating learning materials and adapting Biggle Party so that it can be used on tablets, because many schools, they use tablets. So it's an exciting part. So if you're curious or interested to know more about that, then I guess we can keep you in the loop of how that progresses. But with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. And I guess I'll take any questions.
Wow, Caroline, thank you for this super interesting presentation. And I think everybody is now motivated to go to your QR code, go to the website and play the game. Let's see if we have questions. So To the audience, please feel free to put any questions in the Q&A chat box or in the chat, and then I'm sure Caroline is happy to answer those. A first question is, Into the Deep project is very interesting. Could you explain how to join it? Thanks.
Yes, sorry if I didn't make that clear. So basically, you just have to go onto our website. Is it in the chat? I don't see the chat. One sec. Yeah, so the website's in the chat. So if you go on the website, then you can just click directly on there and you can get started. So in the section, learn about the habitats, and you can choose in what language you'd like to do it. And then you go through these quick learning modules, and it brings you then directly to the Biggle party.
Okay, and then I see a follow-up question on this one, but I don't have marine biodiversity background. After learning the course on your website, am I able to participate in this project?
Yes, definitely. That's the whole point. So we want these little lessons to kind of give you a basis, kind of underlying knowledge about these ecosystems and why they're important and what the scientists want to know about this area. And it should set you up then with everything you need to know to be able to continue. So the last lesson on these projects prepare you for the Biggle party. So then you get to know, okay, these are the different fish you want to look for. This is a lobster and the starfish and the different things you need to, we're going to ask you to look for. Here's some information about them. And then you can directly go into Biggle party.
Okay, so we can see this is really accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even my 8-year-old kid loves it. He thinks it's super fun.
That was actually a question that I wanted to ask. From what age do you think people can play this game?
Yeah, so the actual modules, like the content it's based. Our target group was adult learners, so the actual content is more directed towards adults, let's say. But the actual clicking and making the circles and things like that, that's like I said, my 8-year-old kid thinks it's super fun. And yeah, that's for everybody. And that's what we're trying to do in this school project then, is to adapt the modules so that they're more child friendly. Yeah.
This will be so exciting. Then I see another question in the chat. Is the initiative already rolled out in East Africa, Indian Ocean? If not yet, when is the plan for the rollout?
So for this Into the Deep project, we just did these 4 locations as a pilot for pilot project. But Biggle Party, and that's what we have the handbook for. If you're interested, if you have data in the East Africa Indian Ocean, and then you should be able to look at that handbook and then set up your own citizen science project, because the Biggle Party platform is there. And you can upload data. You have to get in touch with the people that work there and stuff, but you can create your own project as well. But we don't have, unfortunately, funding to add more bodies of water to this particular project. Yeah. But the idea is that it can be replicated.
Okay, that's amazing. So this is really a call to action, either to play the game or to add data to the project. Okay, Caroline, I want to thank you for your super interesting and engaging presentation. I don't think we have any more questions from the audience, but don't worry if you haven't sent your question now. At the end of the webinar, we will still have a short open mic where you can still ask questions, either by speaking or by putting something in the chat. Oh, there's one last question. Maybe we can still take this and then move on to Christoph's presentation. Is there any form of recognition for helping with this project in the sense of CVs, etc.?
Oh, that's a good question. Not in the sense of CVs. We hadn't thought of that in the project. However, if you do, and that's, yeah, if you do take part in this project, and we made it that it's anonymous, but if you're interested, you can leave your email address, and because the idea was also that we connect the public to the scientists, and that there can be discussion there. And if you do take part and you do a lot of annotations and you're interested in keeping up to date, then you can put your email address, and when this data is being used, and you can say that you're interested in being acknowledged, because then when this data is being used and there's a paper published or something from it, then in the acknowledgements, then the scientist can be like, okay, so and so contributed to the citizen science portion of data collected for this project within the publication. And that's something I guess you could always put on a CV, is that you took part in collecting data or annotations for this data set in this publication, something like that. So there's always that possibility as well, because we did want to we played around a little bit with keeping in the anonymity of it, but also providing the opportunity for there to be more of a connection between citizen scientists and scientists there.
Yeah, that's a good balance to find. Okay, I see that there's more questions coming in, but I think it's better to leave this for at the end. So don't worry, we'll come back to these questions at the end of the webinar. Now we will go over to our second presenter of today, Christoph, who will talk about the BlueDot project, also a citizen science project. So Christoph, please take the floor.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
That works.
All right. So thank you for the introductions and the opportunity to talk to you. So I will talk about the BlueDot, which is a citizen science project where we collect temperature data collected from dive computers. And a bit of the background. So I'm actually a volcanologist. I study magma sediment interactions under the sea surface, so at the bottom of the oceans. And to do that, I go on cruises, we drill the ocean floor, or we send little robots to observe the ocean floor. But I'm also a scuba diver, and until winter 2023, I was doing that recreational diving. And then one of the scuba divers told me he didn't see the ocean cooling down in the winter for the past 6 years or so. So that motivated me to start this project. And the bottom right pictures is me pitching out the idea of the project at the DATI Pilot Innovation Sprint and getting funding from BMBF. So I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing this with colleagues from my own institute. Work here at the University of Bremen at Marum. Rebecca Zitoun is working at Geomar. Arim Kopf is working at Marum as well. And we have Arne Schwab, who is our industry partner, who provides the temperature sensor, which I will talk about in a minute. So if I put it here in my camera, no, I don't see. And Rainer Moore, finally, who is the founder of Divelogs. So I want to start with this slide, which is on the left-hand side. It's a representation of what the Earth can do. So last time there was a large igneous province, which is a large magma outpouring at the Earth's surface during the opening of the North Atlantic. That occurred 55 million years ago. And this cooked the sediments and released a lot of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. At that time, it put about 2,000 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere, which triggered a global temperature increase by 7 degrees. This is the only natural equivalent we have to today's emissions. But the only problem is that we are doing it at a faster rate. So you can see the blue bar here. That's the rate of emissions we are doing versus that large igneous province or this magmatic event. And we are also doing it faster. We did it in 200 years versus the natural case, which was 400 years. So in this little natural experiments of ours, where let's say we decided to know what it was like 55 million years ago when the climate was warming, well, we are bound to see some weird things happening. So the main graph here on the slide shows the sea surface temperature measured by satellites and compiled by Copernicus. The bottom lines are the cooler years, so the oldest years, and as you go to the more recent years, the climate warms, so the curve goes higher and higher. 2023 stands out because in March 2023, the sea surface temperature goes up by really a lot compared to previous years, and this never goes down. In 2024, that's the same. And there are no real explanations of why it's so much drifting from previous year's measurements. So that's the motivation of the study. We currently measure ocean temperature via two means. We have satellites that measure the first millimeters of the world's ocean, so it's global, but that's only the first millimeters. Or we have these float of buoys that we drop in the way offshore, and they sink in the ocean and rise up and send their data. So it sends the whole profile, but it's a very scattered fleet of buoys, and they are also drifting. They are not fixed at locations. So it's a problem when treating the data. What we want to fill is this gap, the first 40 meters of the water column, because that's what the divers covers. And divers will tell you that they saw the ocean warming prior to 2023. So how can we substantiate that claim? Well, as you can see on our wrist, we all carry a dive computer. And this is this picture on the right-hand side of my computer. And we use that for safety reasons. So for the past 40 years. So it calculates decompression curves to avoid decompression incident. And in this calculation, it must include temperature. So there is a temperature sensor. And we could make use of that. The only problem is that after the dives, no one is uploading it or making it available to scientists for them to analyze it. So that's the problem, and that's what we want to solve. We want to put it together in a single scientific database, which we can use to fill that gap in ocean monitoring. So we want to fill the gap in depth, but also in time, because we can rewind the problem. We can have at least 30 years of temperature record doing that. So we started this in December 2024. And since we started, so how does it work? We have basically you upload your dives with your dive computer to your computer, and we disconnect it from the user. We collect temperature, depth, date, and geolocation. And it's anonymous. We don't know from who it's from. Since we started this, we collected 165,000 dives. That's more than 20 million individual temperature points. And that covers the last 30 years. So it's quite amazing that we can already see that. Here I'm showing you what the database looks like. So on the top graph, this is the numbers of dives per month, and for the record we have at the moment. And you can see that it's a seasonal thing. People go diving more in the summer than in the winter, right? And on the bottom graph, I just wanted to see if our database is reflecting the world's ocean compared to a known institution, so like NOAA, who is using here the satellite. So those are the red curves. And they plot the temperature difference compared to an average year between 1970 and 2000. And so they compute the temperature increase since then. And I did the same internally with our database, taking a reference in 2006 and compute the temperature increase since then. What's important here, what you should check is the slope, when the slope match. So we see that it matches after 2010 and pretty closely. The conclusion of that is that if we want to take our database and analyze or say something about the global ocean, we should take data that has at least 1,000 dives per month, so it can be meaningful at global scale. I'm not talking about what's happening here after 2016. Maybe we can talk about this later. Now, what I want to talk about is that our database has one main sampling bias. It's by scuba diver, and it's mostly by recreational diver. So they go in the summer, they collect the data wherever they go in the Red Sea or something. And of course, we had a very nice experiment with the travel restriction of the COVID. And you can see that when people can't actually go to exotic places, well, they still dive, right? Because we still have dives on our database, but it's much cooler. So they go to their local lakes or local seas that might be actually cooler. It says something else about our database. It says that it's mostly recreational divers that actually share their dives to dive logs, which is the database, the Facebook of diver. And right now, since we partnered with Divelogs, there is a consent form. So if you have an account on Divelogs and you consent to share your dives, it's transmitted and disconnected from you, and we get the data and we can analyze it. We have one way to go around this sampling bias is to go to locals and professionals. If we tap into the professionals, say on Gozo, on Malta, during the COVID, they were still there and they were still diving, but they are so busy with diving that they are not taking the time to upload their dives. So our goal is to actually find a way so that it's not troublesome for them to upload their dives. And I will publish soon an update on our homepage on how to do just that. So we have also this concept of calibration dive sites, which serves several purposes. And I will run here a little clip that we did during the testing phase of the sensor, and I will talk about it later.
So today we're going to test these sensors. They are designed by our industry partner, and the goal is to put them at depths in reference dive sites so that diver can dive, and then after the dive they can confront the temperature measured by their dive computer with the one measured by the calibrated sensors. So we're going to do a simulation of a rotation of the sensor, and we're going to see if it's easy to take it out of its housing, pick it up, and put another one in place. And we attach it.
Found a BlueDot sensor on your dive? Use your smartphone to scan the QR code from your underwater footage to check the accuracy of your dive computer's temperature measurement. Additionally, you can find out more about the purpose of our BlueDot sensors in regards to global ocean warming.
So, yes, you got the idea. Thank you here to our EV, Jakob Bornhauser, for putting this video together. So calibration dive sites serves three purposes. We can monitor the present. I will show that in a minute. And it provides a mean to calibrate dive computers. So when you dive on the site now, we can share your dives, and we have data from our sensors. We can calibrate your dives and make a better database. And by talking to professionals at the local basis, we can actually tap into these technical divers and professional divers so that we feel that problem, for example, with the COVID. We went in March on Gozo in the Maltese Islands, and we deployed two sites, one in the north, one in the south. We deployed 5 sensors per site distributed over 35 meters. And this is the results after a month of monitoring these sites. So you have the red curve, that's the sensor at 5 meters depth, and the blue curve is at 35 meters depth. So you can see these oscillations of the daily fluctuations with the red sensor at 5 meters, and virtually just the global trend of warming up from the winter to towards the summer with the blue sensor at depth. We had a very great opportunity when we were there, is that the storm hit. And between the first dive and the second dive, the storm had flushed a lot of cold water. So it was actually a good opportunity to pick the sensors, and then I could compare the data to my dive computer and make a proof of concept. So what I found out is that my computer is overestimating the temperature by 0.5 degree. And when I correct that, then basically the squares are now corrected and fit best to the actual temperature that was measured there. So now we can use my dive computer, the data from the Zunto, and the whole profile to actually contribute to a global database. And that's what we would do with people that go diving there and share their dives. Oh, and this is where you can see here at the bottom when the storm hit with the cold waters, and that's really lower down the bottom sensor in terms of temperature. Now, this was a very fun field trip, and thank you to Atlantis Diving for helping us to put the sensor at depth. Here is a little mashup of our adventure. So as you can see, it's great fun and it's for nature. We are monitoring what's going on and understanding better how the ocean is warming. So that's really a fun work to do. Now, what can we do with the BlueDot database? We can analyze the past, monitor the present, as I showed, and maybe say something about the future. Let's go at the regional scale. I mean, big regional, like the Mediterranean. So the square here is over the Mediterranean Sea, and we plot all our data between 2009 and 2024. And here we plot the average sea surface temperature from the dive computers. So we pick the last temperature from a dive and take it as a sea surface temperature. It's actually a data that we can compare to satellite, so that's great. And on the right-hand side, this is the temperature at maximum depths. People go diving in average at 25 meters depth maximum. So you can think of it as this is the data or the temperature at 25 meters depth. So you can play the game of looking at what are the differences with the graphs. There are some, and I will talk about it now. Now, I put the two curves again on the left. On the top, the red is converted to average temperature per year. So the actual temperature on the left graph now, the big graph. So you can see it's obviously warmer than at 25 meters depth. Now, what I do is I compute the difference taking 2010 as a reference. So it brings the two curves together and it tells how much it has warmed up at the sea surface and at depths since 2010. And you can see that since 2010, they both go by hand until 2012, warming up at 1 degree per year, which can be considered as a marine heat wave. Interestingly, it stops increasing at the sea surface after that, and it continues to rise up at depths. So the marine heat wave is going deeper and deeper. And maybe it's actually transmitting to or converting into a deep marine heat wave. Now, I want to draw your attention to the end of the curves, when the two curves crosses. That's March 2023. Now, the real question is it a coincidence or not? We still have to collect more data to have better statistical or average value on our database. But maybe what it means is that there is a feedback between a deep marine heat wave and the shallow marine heat wave. So I'll try to explain how this may work now. And so I put back here the average temperature at maximum depth on the left. And I have to talk about thermocline. So thermocline is, imagine you dive, you go just under the sea surface, it's really warm. And if you go deep enough, there's a sharp temperature decrease. That's a thermocline. The ocean and the water in the ocean, it's because of its physical property. You need about 4 degrees to warm up the water by 1 degree. So when you do that, you effectively accumulate 4 degrees in the water, and this thermocline becomes a capacitor, a reservoir of heat. You build it up during the summer, during the warm season, and as you go towards the winter, the cool water from the bottom of the ocean is supposed to take up that heat and erode it, or it's eroded by the top convecting air. So you give back heat to the atmosphere. It was working like this very well until 2010. As you can see here, it's very cold, right? At the deep of the winter. So the thermocline is effectively gone. But recently, the temperature has warmed up even at 25 meters depth in the winter. It doesn't cool that much. And it could be due to the fact that the deep part of the ocean has warmed up. It's not, the temperature contrast between the deep and the thermocline is not as important anymore, so it doesn't take that much heat anymore, meaning that this thermal blanket lasts for longer. And if it lasts for longer, it's an opportunity for the top convection cells of the atmosphere to pick up more heat from the ocean for a longer time, feeding back the greenhouse problem. So you're sending more heat and more heat is being trapped. And maybe you're effectively lowering the capacity of the ocean to absorb heat from 70% of the energy from the sun being captured to 65, say. That's a possibility. I'm just raising the problem here. So now we can go to the future. We have these IPCC curves, which tells us that the climate may warm up to 4 degrees in 2100. Well, if it doesn't take into account this process, we might have to revise that. And the closest proxy to that, from my perspective, from where I come from in science, is 55 million years ago when the North Atlantic was opening and emitting about the same amount as we've done in 400 years and trigger a global temperature increase by 7 degrees. So maybe if you look at these IPCC curves, you should look at a point that is in 2100 of the chart here at 7 degrees. And that's maybe what we should expect. So this is not, I mean, it should not be sounding too glim. What we are trying to do here is basically look at the fact and fill a gap. If we don't have data, we can't really say anything. We need to analyze the data. And this is what we are doing. We are not ducking our head in the sand. We are looking at it and facing it. And we want to know how bad is the problem. So we are filling this temperature gap. And we are doing it with the help of divers and their will to share. These divers become citizen scientists, and that's really great. And I'm really thankful for them. And maybe we can then help to understand this problem with the ocean warming. This is my credit slide. So on the left, you have our host institutions. I'm based here at the University of Bremen in Marum. We have our industry partner, partake, and Divelogs, and one of our colleagues working at Geomar. Calibration dive sites, we have 2 partner dive bases in the Mediterranean. The first one on the Maltese in Gozo, where we deployed in March the first sensors. This is Atlantis Diving, and again, thank you for your help at setting up the sensors. And if you dive there since then, share your dives, we can use it and calibrate your dives and use it in our database. We hope to be able to release an output of the database within the frame of the pilot phase of the project, which runs until May next year. And by then we should have a routine and the database should be live. The second dive base in Mediterranean will be Poseidon Diving on the Costa Brava in Spain. And we'll go there in June to deploy the calibration dive sites and sensors. And the funding agency, DIT Pilot, which is a brand new funding line from BMBF. And with that, thank you for your attention. Share your dives.
Thank you so much, Christophe, for your presentation. I think we all learned a lot. And for those who are not diving yet, maybe this can be an inspiration to try it out. And of course, share your data with the project. So we have a few questions that came in during the presentation. So I'm going to say it again. Please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A chat box or just in the chat if you can find it. And then Yeah, Christoph can help you with all your questions. So a first one is amazing initiative, Christoph. For the data gathering, are you targeting any specific regions? If so, how do you classify them? Also, you mentioned reference sites. Are you planning to increase the number of reference sites?
So I want to stress that the database and the data we are collecting is global, because people that have created their account on dive logs, they have dove all over the planet and they are sharing their dives. So the geolocation that we have about these dives is all over the planet. But the calibration dive sites, for now, it's a concept that we have developed. So we are targeting few places in the Mediterranean so far, in the Maltese and on the Costa Brava in Spain. We are planning to do more in the second phase of the project, and probably to expand in the Atlantic and other regions. There is a very good reason why we deployed first on the Maltese is because it's a shallow plateau. There's not much water column beneath the sea surface there. There's about 400 meters. So if we have a deep marine heat wave, it quickly reaches the bottom and it quickly warms up the bottom, and the effect that I was talking about is more pronounced. So that's a good spot to actually check that hypothesis.
Okay, so yeah, for the audience, from anywhere in the world, you can participate in both Caroline's and Christoph's project, as you can see. Then another question, does a diver have to visit a reference site to be able to contribute data with their computer? I think you mentioned this, but maybe...
It's a very good question. So let's say in the data that we are collecting, we also collect the brand of the dive computer through which the data was measured. And as you saw, I was with my data, it comes from Zunto. So now there is this brand and this model of Zunto is calibrated with my dives, but we can apply it to some extent to others of the same brand and same class or model. And so I was the one diving there and calibrating this one, but in some sense, we will be able to weight all the Zunto brand and model, and you don't necessarily need to be there to calibrate your dives. It's just a mean to make our database a bit better, and it's a quality control as well.
Okay, thank you. Then another question. Amazing, there's many questions coming in. Amazing initiative, Christoph. For the data gathering, sorry, we've been through this one. Have there been any correlation between the data that BlueDot has collected with coral bleaching events in the Caribbean and the Pacific?
Again, that's a very good question. We haven't looked into that in particular. For that, we will need to study our data at regional scale. So northeast of the Australia on the reefs or wherever the coral was bleaching. And for the period, we can probably say something, and we will do some specific studies and release findings as we go on. But for now, we want to really make the proof of concept with the database. And there will be a couple of technical papers first, and then more scientific, and then targeting.
Okay, thank you. It'll be exciting to see what the future brings. Then, as a diver, what is the easiest and more direct way to share my dive data?
So that's a very good question. We on the homepage, if you go to our homepage, I think it was posted in the chat. You can find in there a rough sketch of how to upload. I will post in this section a little tutorial video on how to do it. So, but basically you have to create an account in divelogs.org or .de. And then you can upload your dives either directly by divelogs or by subsurface and say export your dive to divelogs.de. And then it will be there. And you can edit your dives, you can put the geolocation in a very easy way on divelogs. So I will show all that in the tutorial video later on.
Okay, thank you. Do you think dive computer data can be used without calibration?
That's what we are saying, yes. We could have collected the data just like that and make the output of our database. But we are going a step further with that. We are doing some corrections with it. I mean, every dive computers a different reactivity with respect to change in temperature. So when you go deeper and suddenly change the ambient temperature, some computers react quickly measure the real temperature, others are delayed. There are ways to adjust that in the database and we will filter that. But also every temperature sensor is not only dive computers, every temperature sensor has an offset to the real temperature. So that was the calibration dive sites where the idea was we have calibrated those, we know the exact temperature there, and we can compare with the dive computers that have been shared the data here, and so we can know and readjust. And like I said, with knowing the brand, knowing the model, we can apply that to the whole series of data that comes from this brand and models.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see another question, Christophe. Thank you for your excellent research work. Would you have any plan of this type work in Indian Ocean? Would you have plans in Bangladesh, Oceanographic Research Institute?
So like I said, we have a plan to make the database hosted on a permanent basis in national servers. For the second phase, that will be our goal, is that the database goes on and is live. When it comes to the specific regions with the calibration dive site, we will expand bit by bit. And we will see how we can do that if we can find some means to do that and expand. But most likely we'll start with the Atlantic.
Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't mean that you can't share from the Indian Ocean. Like I said, share your dives there. It will give us an idea. There will be some error bar. And if you dive, say, with the same brand as I have, we can make an error bar more precise from your data that is shared from the Indian Ocean. It's very useful that you share from anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, here's another question for Caroline. So normally at the end of the webinar, we have an open mic, but there's so many questions coming in. So I suggest that we just go over all the questions. They can be for both Christophe or both Caroline, and they can help you with answering your questions. So this one is for Caroline. We are planning to develop a fish identification platform through citizen science. Would it be feasible to implement this in data-limited regions like Sri Lanka? We would appreciate your advice on how to approach the development of such a platform.
It's a good question. May I ask for some clarification? So do you have images, just limited amount of images, or how exactly do you plan to incorporate citizen scientists here? Can I ask a clarification question on that, or?
Yeah, Gunan, if you Gunalan, my apologies. If you are still in the webinar, please feel free to give a bit more information in the chat or by putting on your microphone, and then Caroline can further help you with the question. If you are still in the webinar, Gunalan.
Otherwise, I can try based on, okay, so so with what we have with Into the Deep is that we have the images there, and we use the images then for the citizen science that they can identify them. But there are other types of citizen science projects where you have, I think it's called Minka, where you can also go, and then if you're on the beach or if you're swimming and you see fish, then you can then you see an organism, then you can identify that. So there are so many different types of citizen science projects out there. Specifically with Into the Deep, since it's one of these hands-off and we, I guess, computer-based, then a requirement for that is to have images for the citizen sciences to look at. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other types of citizen science projects where you would go into the actual location to be able to identify the different fish. I don't know if that helps, if that answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Gunalan, if you're still in the chat, I hope this has helped. Then a question, this one is for Christoph. Do you have any specific diving computer recommendations? Have you observed important differences between brands?
Yes, there are big differences. And when I started this project, I took the opportunity to buy a new one and make sure this one is good for the project. I don't want to make publicity for any brand here, but there are papers that exist in the peer-reviewed journals. There are studies already that exist. Try to Google it. They might be available via ResearchGate or something like this, and you can make your judgment by this. You have to look for quick response time of the temperature sensor, and you have to look for accuracy. So these two components. And I really, it's not my job to make publicity for brands. But yeah, you can find some studies online.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, coming back to you, I see that Gunalan has said that they don't have images, coming back to the question related to Sri Lanka. And he also says, thank you, we will check it out. But if you have anything you want to add.
I'm looking at this Minka project that I mentioned that does citizen science observatories. Maybe that can help and give some ideas. So I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I see another question for Christoph. You mentioned that there will be fieldwork in June in the coast near Barcelona. Do you know the specific dates, and would it be open to other divers to participate and help?
It's a good question. So we don't know yet exactly when we will deploy in June. The dive base here I mentioned that is partnered with us is Poseidon Diving. So if you go diving with them, sometimes in the summer after that, in July, August, share your dives, because we will be able to compare it with sensors. And it's important to say that it's not because you didn't find the sensor on your dive that we can't use your dive, right? We have sensors distributed over 35 meters. They record all the time. If you dive, let's say here, and then the sensor is somewhere 100 meters next to it and you don't see it, it's the same depth, it's the same temperature. We can use your dive. You don't need to see it. If you see it, don't touch it, take a picture. We have a QR code on it. So I don't know where I need to put that here. You can take a picture of the QR code, check your footage, and it will bring you to the project. All the instructions are there. It's good practice, don't touch it, yeah? Yeah, we do that. We can't invite people to do to put the sensors with us for safety reasons and so on. But come and dive afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Christoph. I see that we have still a few questions, but first, maybe we can launch a quick poll to see how everybody feels and thinks after your two presentations. So I'll just quickly launch these polls. Okay, so everybody should be able to see a poll with 4 questions in total. Have you ever taken part in citizen science projects? Second question, if you have ever taken part in a citizen science project, what type? So an open answer. Then the third question, do you think the types of citizen science projects presented today help bridge the gap between scientists and the public? And then as a last question, in your opinion, do these types of projects help increase the public's trust in the scientific method? So please, for everybody who is still with us, have a look at the poll questions and yeah, let us know. In the meantime, I will also share the emails of Christoph and Caroline in the chat for those who still have any questions or comments. Then you can reach out. Okay, and since it's quite a long poll, I will give a bit more time for our audience to look at the questions. In the meantime, Caroline, maybe I can ask you something. In your presentation, you talked about the social and emotional learning dimensions and then the behavioral dimensions. And I was wondering, was there something for you that triggered this emotional learning dimension and that made you say like, yes, I want to do something related to the ocean. Yes, I want to do citizen science projects.
That's a good question. Yeah, so, well, for me, as a child, I moved around a lot too. Because of my dad's work, we moved around to many different countries and we were always living close to big ports. He worked in the shipping industry. So I always had the ocean around me. It was always a connecting thing. And I think for me as a kid, not really knowing where I belonged, the one connecting thing between everything was the ocean. And then as I grew older, I actually did I wasn't sure what to do at one point in my life, and I went to South Africa, and I was working with a PhD student. She was tracking southern right whales, and that's where I learned. I was like, oh wow, we can actually do something like with the ocean that's not just shipping. And that's how kind of my journey in this area started. And then within the outreach and the educational side of things, I always just enjoyed that part. I enjoyed talking to people. During my PhD, I often went to, as a scientist in the classroom, went to classrooms and talked to students about science. And so the communication side has always been kind of there for me. And so it's kind of a natural progression then in this way. So that's my heart side.
That's so nice to hear. And yeah, I think many of us can relate to that with feeling like, oh, which path am I going to go to? Am I feeling lost? What do I want to do? I think that's something many of us feel, but it's beautiful to hear that the ocean was your guideline forward. Okay, I will end the poll now and see what results we have. So have you ever taken part in citizen science project? So 59% says no. So this webinar is a great opportunity to start doing this. 41% has already said yes. So to those who already have done it, feel free to share in the chat why somebody should participate in a citizen science project. And then what type of citizen science project have those that answered yes already participated in. So I see classification, training, machine learning, marine biodiversity assessment in the customary areas of indigenous fishers in southwest coast of India, marine life observations, debris tracker, turtle identification, Coral Watch program engaging local communities in monitoring coral health. Okay. Somebody is saying I already took part in the BlueDot and uploaded my dives into a database. That is great to hear. Okay. Then, do you think the types of citizens projects presented today help bridge the gap between scientists and the public? So I see that many people actually say yes, very much, 65%. A few say yes, and then a few say maybe, but it seems that most of the people watching this webinar are convinced that this actually contributes. And then, in your opinion, do these types of projects help increase the public's trust in the scientific method? And yeah, same here, 59% saying yes, very much, and 35% saying yes, 6% saying maybe. So it's nice to hear that everybody watching this webinar feels that this has a real impact. Okay, I think with this we can end the webinar for today. If there's anything, Christopher, Caroline, you still want to add, then go ahead and yeah.
I just say big thank you. Thank you very much for everybody who joined, and thanks for having us, Anna, and planning everything.
Same here. Thank you. And share your dives if you are a diver.
Okay, then I still want to thank Christopher and Caroline for making the time to present about these two projects, and to the audience, of course, for staying with us and being so interactive during the webinar. A last thing that I want to mention is that we have a next webinar on Wednesday, the 28th of May, about navigating opportunities in the blue sustainable economy for ECOPs and youth in Canada. So if you don't follow us yet on LinkedIn and Instagram, please do, and then you can stay up to date of all the webinars that are still to come. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day or evening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.